Hey, this is Sam Black, and today I wanted to discuss my current favorite way to play Magic, which is Commander Cube. And I think that this format is not as well known or as popular as it deserves, and so I kind of want to just try to bring it to more people's attention. And I don't really have a script right now or any notes or anything. I just kind of wanted to explain what it is, how it works, and some of the um, goals and nuances of how my cube is built and stuff like that. So, Commander Cube is pretty straightforward. If you understand those two concepts, it's just both of them together. So, you're drafting commander decks from a collection of from a curated collection of cards. Um, a random portion of that curated collection of cards. So a cube that you draft commander decks from. My cube is a little over 800 cards at the moment, and it's singleton, so no duplicates of any kind. And I draft usually with 3 packs of 20 cards for each player, and each person takes 2 picks, 2 cards every time they take cards from a pack. So it's drafted using the exact same structure that's used in drafting Commander Legends as recommended by Wizards. I've played around with a couple of different ways of doing that. I've done 4 packs of 15, and I've done only 1 pick per pack. And I like 3 packs of 20 with 2 picks per pack because I think that planning for things to table and seeing what does table is an interesting component of drafting, and that's doesn't really get to show up as much if you're doing 15 card packs when people are taking 2 picks per pack, especially if you have more than 4 players drafting. I should clarify, I play this with anywhere between 3 and 8 people in a single draft. And then sometimes for smaller numbers, we'll play 1 game, and for larger numbers, we'll split into 2 games. And so I like that with 20 card packs, you get more cards tabling, and with 2 picks per pack, you get to. I think it makes the draft portion more interesting because rather than just evaluating the single best card for your deck based on what you have, you get to be thinking about permutations and combinations of cards and thinking about how 2 cards might work together and then how that fits in the rest of your deck. And then also, it's faster, which is important when you're drafting 60 cards instead of 40. And also, I think that it's more difficult to pivot, change colors and stuff in a commander draft than a regular draft because your commander constrains your colors, and so getting to send more clear signals faster by like if you're taking all the red cards and you're taking 2 picks per pack instead of taking one and then hoping to table the other red card, it sends clearer signals and makes it more likely, even if the people you're passing to aren't thinking about the signals, those red cards that you took just won't be in the pack for them to take. And so even if you have like more novice drafters that aren't necessarily looking for signals, those signals still come through and lead to people, I think, fighting with their neighbors less than they would if you were taking 1 pick per pack and you're taking 2 picks per pack. So I think it plays better with this format in particular. So that's why I draft 3 packs of 20, 2 picks per pack. And people often ask about, like, do you draft the commanders separately? Do you choose them in some other way? No, they're just in the packs. It's, again, the same structure as Commander Legends. There are a lot of legendary creatures in the cube, and specifically among gold cards, because people usually want to play more than one color. For each color pair, there are 8 cards of that color pair in the cube, and 7 of them can be your commander. And for each color trio, every 3-color card can be a commander. and I think there are 6 of them per trio in my cube. Five of them per trio in my cube. Um, so there are a lot of, and then on top of that, there are a variety of partner commanders, both single color and every 2-color pair has one partner commander of that pair. So there are a lot of different ways to find a commander that's going to fit your color needs. What I tell people who are new to the cube is that, of course, if you take a commander early, you can just draft to that commander and its colors and its strategy. But if you don't find a commander early that you want, if you stick to 2 colors, and then you're open to splashing a third, you'll almost certainly find a commander at some point in the draft that will let you play both of those colors, and then it might also give you a third color, and then you can start adding cards in that kind of splash color that is your third color later in the draft once you've found a commander that you like. So the 2 other special rules at the end of the draft, everyone just gets a command tower to add to their deck. This is something that I learned from the people who introduced me to commander drafting, and I kind of like that it alleviates some amount of pressure on your mana base and some pressure to prioritize lands. I think prioritizing lands in a draft is like kind of spiky and like not that fun relative to prioritizing just like fun cards. And so giving people that little bit better mana lets the lands generally go later. And so people generally take the exciting cards that they see and then will table some number of lands that fit in their colors and get those later. And I found that with the free mulligan and the slower nature of commander and everything, people can have, you know, a little bit shakier of a mana base than they would have in like a, you know, competitive, especially like a 2-player cube environment. So also, you know, like basically every commander deck has a command tower in the wild. And then this way, when you draft the commander decks, your commander decks feel like commander decks, and they all have command towers also, for better or for worse. The other special rule is something that I've started playing with recently, which is if you play a monocolored commander, you may splash up to 6 cards of any other color, and you can play any number of lands that help you do that. And I've found since before introducing that rule, people never played monocolor commanders in my drafts. Since introducing it, people have been more likely to play monocolor commanders, and sometimes they don't even splash, but just the assurance that they'll be able to use some other cards makes it feel a lot safer to try to be mono when you don't know for sure if you're going to see enough playables in one color. 6 extra playables goes a really long way to making sure that that happens. So that rule has done a good job of adding more variety to the number of cards that I've seen play as commanders, which just helps deck diversity in the format. So those are the rules. You know, it's once you have drafted your deck, you just play a totally regular game of Commander, except you're playing 60 card decks instead of 99, I should say. It's, you know, Commander decks are 100 cards, but that includes your Commander. The way that I play, it's 60 cards, and then your Commander's separate from that. The reason that I prefer that is just that I think that it helps people grok mana bases. If you're used to building a 60 card deck and you understand the land ratios that you want in a 60 card deck, then adjusting to a 59 card deck is more difficult than not doing that. I typically recommend to players in my cube that they play 26 to 28 lands. That's a very high portion of lands relative to what a lot of commander players play in commander decks, but I typically recommend more lands in commander in general. I've been recommending this to everyone I play with. They've been following it for the most part, and it's played pretty well. I don't get a lot of complaints about flooding. It happens sometimes. You know, your draws are inconsistent in Magic. You're always going to have too many or too few lands some portion of the time, but I've been happy with about that number. As for philosophy in choosing which cards are in the cube. I have been trying to curate an environment that plays what I've seen described as the slower board game style of multiplayer Commander, where it's not like the games are ending on turn 4 or turn 6. It's the games are ending sometime after everyone's lost track of how many turns we've been playing. They typically last more than an hour. With 3 players, sometimes it's under an hour. With 4 players, it's rarely under an hour and sometimes goes over 2 hours. So the cube is designed to lead to games that play that way. And so, the idea is that you want to minimize the number of cards that are bad to draw late because the game is going to go long. You don't want to have people kind of trap themselves by playing cards that are only good in the opening hand. And there are no 2-card combos. The list while I'm recording this might still have Heliod, which is a 2-card combo with Walking Ballista. That is my intent is to remove that. I've also removed Kiki-Jiki recently, or well, not that recently, but I had it in at one point and removed it because it was just too easy to combo with. And I think that 2-card combos ending the game is often less satisfying than the game coming to some other conclusion. 3-card combos are kind of harder to spot all of them and harder to come together, especially because it's a very large cube, and if you're looking for 3 specific cards to form a combo, they likely won't all be in the same draft. And even if you get them all, my cube has no ways to search your library for specific cards and relatively little library manipulation. So all the decks are pretty high variance, and so it's hard to get 3 specific cards to come together. So the games very rarely end as a result of some kind of combo finish. There's nothing like Thassa's Oracle that would just kind of end a game out of nowhere. There's not even Craterhoof Behemoth, though there are some cards like that. Like Insurrection, for example, is a card that can often end a game. I have had some games go long enough that some players are kind of ready for the game to end. So I like to make sure that there are some number of cards that end the game at some point, but I want them to only be cards that close a game after a game has already happened. So any of the really good finishers kind of require a lot of things to be in play or some kind of event to have happened. So that my goal in each game is really to have allowed everyone to have had at least a turn or a turn cycle where their deck was really doing their thing and they felt like they were posing a serious threat to win the game or they were ahead. So I like to have a lot of ways to do something powerful and then answer that, so there can be a lot of back and forth and everyone can kind of have their moment. Another unorthodox set of choices in my cube, and this is one that I don't necessarily recommend for all playgroups. If you're designing your own Commander cube, I would generally advise sticking with a lot of the other concepts that I've talked about. But here, reasonable people can disagree with what leads to the best gameplay experience. My cube contains cards like Balance, Jokulhaups, Obliterate, Cataclysm, Warp World, the Great Aurora, cards that radically change the board or destroy most permanents. And then also cards like Boros Charm and Teferi's Protection and Heroic Intervention that protect a player's cards from some of those effects. So sometimes a game will end because someone plays one of those things, either when they're ahead in a way that lets them break the symmetry, like if you have some powerful enchantment like Mirari's Wake and you cast Jockle Hops or Obliterate, and then you're much better at rebuilding because of the powerful enchantment that you kept around. Or if you play Teferi's Protection, floating some mana, and then cast Balance, and everyone else loses their permanence and you don't. That is very much like a 2-card win the game combo. But you have to have enough things in play that you're ahead enough that it wins the game, which really doesn't take much when you're killing all of everyone else's permanence. The reason that I have these cards is that I want it to feel like everyone who's still alive is still in the game, and you need the potential for big swings to allow that. And I also really want to avoid having any kind of sacred resources in the game, so some object that can't be removed. In particular, I think in a lot of Commander environments, lands function as a sacred resource because there are a lot of play groups that frown upon playing cards like Balance and Jockle Hops. And so once a land is in play, or Armageddon even, once land is in play, it tends to stay in play. And if everything else is pretty fluid, there are a lot of sweepers and Wheel of Fortunes and big life gain cards or whatever, so that life, cards in play, cards in hand all kind of change around a lot, but your lands don't, then getting more lands into play is the most powerful thing you can do, and it can be hard to catch up to a player who gets a mana advantage, especially in this kind of slower board game style of Commander game. If you're not winning fast, then you're winning by playing a lot of big cards over time, and extra mana helps you do that. And so I've attacked the idea that a game would be defined by that in a variety of ways, both including mass land destruction and also minimizing the ability to get ahead on mana. So this cube doesn't have anything that costs less than 3 mana that gives you more than 1 mana. So there's, of course, no Sol Ring, no Grim Monolith, no Mana Vault, no Mana Crypt. There's also no Joraga Tree Speaker, no Bloom Tender, no Devoted Druid. So it's very, I suppose, arguably the exception is Incubation Druid, which costs 2 mana and can give you more than that, but not without investing more mana. Also, Sanctum Weaver is a 2 mana creature that can give you more than 1 mana, but again, only with the help of other cards that cost mana. So in general, this is to say the cube is very careful with how explosive it allows mana to be. Also, previously, the cube was designed to allow library searching only for basic lands. If a card could search for a non-basic, it wasn't in, and if it could search for any other card type, it wasn't in. I am moving toward also removing things that search for basic lands, but I haven't finished that yet, and I'm not really rushing it. So Sakura Tribe Elder and Topiary Stomper, for example, are both currently in the cube, but I expect that I will replace them at some point. But Rampant Growth and Cultivate and Kodama's Reach and Explosive Vegetation and all the variants of all of those cards are not in. There are a ton of them that are very core cards to Green's color identity in Commander. And I think that all of them are kind of generically high picks early in a draft that do something pretty strong, especially in the kind of gameplay that this cube is looking for. But I think that they really homogenize green decks, and I think that they're not very interesting. Their power level is not very dynamic depending on what other cards you have. They just kind of do what they do. And I think that the draft is less interesting if there are a bunch of those around for anyone who's drafting green to prioritize or to put people into green just to get this mana advantage. So I found other interesting green cards. Green does have an identity, but it's just not that thing. And I've been happy with how green plays, and I haven't felt like those are necessary. And I've appreciated, making decks spend less time searching their libraries, in addition to just making the draft more interesting by removing these kind of obvious universal picks for green decks. And so that's basically it in terms of the philosophy about why cards are in the cube, and a little bit of why some cards aren't in the cube, especially covering kind of my starting points. So that's it. For anyone who's interested, you could copy my cube list as a way to get a start, or of course build your own with those guidelines, or any of those guidelines that you feel would work well for you in your play group. Again, just big picture, the things that I like so much about this format are, well, first of all, it involves drafting, which is great. Second, it involves kind of the slow multiplayer, really good casual environment supported by Commander games, where you get multiple people participating in the same game, so you get kind of more engagement, more social involvement, politics for better or worse, if you like that, and just there's a lot. The strategy is so deep when you're not playing to your own outs, but you're playing to the table's outs, and you're not just playing with your own resources, but you're playing to account for other resources that could work for you or against you, and trying to navigate so that your best threats are the ones someone else casts, as long as it's not threatening you. Your best removal is the removal someone else casts, as long as it's not removing your things. And so just I think Magic's a really interesting game when you're playing to maximize those things. And then it avoids what I consider to be kind of the biggest pitfalls of Commander, which are kind of those like rule zero conversations, the discussions about getting everyone on the same wavelength in terms of strength of cards you're playing, expectations about what you're looking for in a game, and just getting decks that are going to be at a similar power level to play an interesting kind of game. And I think that what often happens when you're playing Commander decks out in the wild is that people are going to have decks that are different power levels, and someone's going to come out ahead, and then the story is going to be kind of about the rest of the table gathering together to take that person down. And then, is that combined strength enough to do that? Does it happen early enough that someone else can emerge as like the big threat? Or where does the rest of the people teaming up fail to match the power level of what one of the players has left or something? And I think that like the really, really powerful individual cards like Sol Ring and Mana Crypt often provide a structure where they tell you who the enemy is early in the game. And some people appreciate the kind of like direction that offers, and it helps let you know who to attack and where to prioritize your answers and stuff. But I think that I've preferred the games where everyone's kind of on equal footing, and who the threat is a little bit more dynamic as the decks are more balanced in power, because they're all drafted from the same card pool that, at least in my case, tries to have a relatively narrow power band. And everyone was sitting at the table. They were all kind of, taking the best cards as they saw them. The power level tends to be relatively evenly distributed among players. And so it just makes sure that all the decks are kind of fundamentally at roughly comparable power levels. And have different ideas, have similar ideas about the way the game should play. They reflect kind of the design of the cube as a whole. And so it leads to kind of a more curated, tighter experience that can kind of reliably offer games that play in a particular way. And so for people who are really interested in that specific play style of those like long games with a lot of back and forth, I think that Commander Cube is a great way to capture that. So that's it for now. My next video is going to go into the cards that aren't in my cube in a little more detail. So beyond just that early mana and stuff, kind of both touching on some of the cards that I didn't exclude just like from first principles, where it was, you know, doing something that wasn't in line with what I was trying to do. But then also there have been a lot of cards over the months that I've removed from my cube because they were too swingy or too powerful, and so those have been taken out. And then also I wanted to discuss some more about like archetypes as a concept in cubes in general, and how that fits in or doesn't fit in to Commander Cube and why. So if you liked this and you're interested in hearing more about the design philosophy of Cube, and then also getting into which cards aren't in my cube because they're a little too strong, I think has some crossover applications to just kind of which cards have the potential to be oppressive in some lower power level commander environments. So it also kind of, I think, carries over into just cards to watch for if you're building lower power level commander decks. Things that you might want to avoid if you're trying to, you know, not dominate at the table the same way that they might in this cube. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will be back soon with that detailed look at some of the cards that I've found strongest or too strong in this environment and why they're no longer in my cube. Thanks and goodbye for now.